And now it's time for this week's Kids Corner. Tonight we're zooming in on a fascinating little reptile called a gecko. These lizards have some extraordinary abilities that allow them to do things that, hey, we can only imagine. Many animals have claws for climbing, but God created some geckos with extra special feet. About 60% of geckos have incredible sticky feet. Now, the bottom of these geckos' feet is covered in millions of tiny hairs called SETAE. These microscopic hairs are basically arranged in tightly packed rows. But each tiny hair can be around 1,000 times thinner than one of our human hairs. Near the end, they split off, and at the very end of each one is a tiny suction cup. Now, the suction cups, called spatulae, which is where my friend comes into play here, are attracted to the surface on which the gecko stands by very weak atomic interactions. They're called van der Waals forces. Now, the force is so tiny that it's barely enough to keep atoms bonded together, but the billions of spatulae basically on the bottom of the gecko's foot is more than enough to keep the gecko stuck to almost any surface, not just my hand. Well, imagine if you could stand on your wall or on your ceiling and not fall to the floor. Well, geckos can do just that, even if their ceiling is made out of slick glass. The amazing design of the gecko's foot is an all-or-nothing system. I mean, if these lizards didn't have everything in place at the same time, their feet wouldn't work. They would either not stick at all, or maybe like a suction cup, their feet would get stuck and not release. And so the second they stepped foot on something, they couldn't move for the rest of their life. I mean, the only logical way to get the extremely complex foot of a gecko is intentional design. The design of the gecko's foot is extremely complex and would be a challenge for mutations and chance to produce. But it's no problem for the all-knowing, all-powerful, supernatural God of the Bible. You know, the book of Job, chapter 12, prompts us to ask the animals, and they will teach you that the Lord's hand has made them. The gecko's foot is a testimony to God's power and His design.